Alright, how's everyone doing today? So, it is 1942. I am playing Japan, and I have set up an entire scenario just for you guys. Because I wanted to test something. Now, we look at the tag USA. What do we have here in the US? We have this task force. It's a task force of submarines. Okay, that's whatever. Tag. Let's AI off. And let's okay. This is gonna take 30 days to launch. So let's take all of the US ships and base them in Honolulu. There it is. Alright. All of them have been selected. Disable the USAI, just the USAI. Because we want to see what this does. Now, I have done the Strike South focus. And Strike South focus. And we get this mission through Nishinron. This strike. Ugh. Oh, time remaining 3 days. Okay, so it's going to take even less time. Alright, let's not have it go on automatic. Then, we'll do this. So we don't, get automatically invaded. Essentially, that's not gonna be part of a video. So we get the strike south, that's good. And this is how it is done. This is how it will turn out, essentially. So we're going to have I saved it. I saved it on June 3rd. Okay, I can go back then. And we're going to wait quite a bit of time. We're going to let all their ships get into port. And let's see. Alright. They have got a crap ton in there now. So let's do this. Now, what does this do? The strike is going, it's going, it's going. Tag USA. We got all these ships here. Strike is impending. And boom. Alright, there we go. Attack on Pearl Harbor. This is what it does. Gains a day of infamy, which grants naval AA attack minus 25%. Ship repair speed minus 15%. The Empire of naval AA attack. Hold on. Let's look at it here. Where is it? Liberty ships, Lend-Lease, Bureau ships, Greenland, trading. There we go. Spotting chance against the Empire of Japan, minus 40%. Capital ship attack against a country, or capital ship attack against the Empire of Japan, minus 40%. So this is essentially here to say, okay, if a bunch of the U.S. ships don't end up being striked in Honolulu with the Pearl Harbor strike on Honolulu, then you get that capital ship attack against country, because all those capital ships, 15 to be precise, are supposed to be in repair and at the bottom of the Honolulu Harbor, Pearl Harbor, Harbor. Because the developers know that the AI isn't going to always put its ships in Honolulu. You also get the Navy AA attack and the ship repair speed. So what has that done? Well, what has that done and what is it for? Well, if a bunch of ships are in Pearl Harbor, well then ship repair speed is crap. And Navy AA attack is also crap. Why is this? So that you have an advantage when facing off against the U.S. Navy as Japan. It gives you... So, say you're both players. Well, one, if you're LARPing, role-playing, or if it's one of the rules in your multiplayer game that you have to have ships, a fleet or two in Honolulu when Pearl Harbor happens, because that's what happened historically, and you don't want bullshit happening to where the US just fucking super fleets and destroys your navy, right? Unless you've got rules against that, but I'm not going to talk about those rules. I don't like those rules. Rules with the Navy are generally just very crappy because people just can't remember them. Anyway, did that sink any of our ships? I don't think so, but they are all obviously very, 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 very hurt. Now, we put all of our ships in here, and realistically, it was more like half of the U.S. Navy. At least half of our battleships were in Honolulu. Everything else was over in essentially Norfolk. Now we're going to move these guys so that we can see just how freaking devastating this was on the battleships. Come on. Okay, here we go. Look at this. This is insanity. 3.8 years, 4 years, 4 years, 2.6 years. That is crazy. And then we have even more. So this is a really damn devastating strike. Really devastating. And this is just kind of the icing on the cake. If, of course, you actually have ships in Honolulu. And, of course, it's only icing on the cake for Japan. Um, essentially, if you try and superfleet now, then you're going to have a real tough time of it. You tag Jap. You may have just about double the ships as Japan, but they're all forcibly on low HP, and it's not good. Not good at all for them. Tag USA. Now, did any of these guys... It doesn't look like they got anything especially... So it's literally just needing to be repaired. They don't have any, like, fires or any guns or steering or anything like that taken out. At least not in this version. It don't look like. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. Oh, which is interesting. But that's what it does. So back to what I was trying to say here. So you're the US. You have a rule in a multiplayer game that you have to have one of your fleets based in Honolulu. Based in Pearl Harbor. So you, at the beginning of the game, you separate your subs out, you split your fleet into two, and you start building a whole bunch of ships and carriers and all that stuff. You think that you're real prepared. And of course, because historically it didn't happen with the carriers, you can build a bunch of extra carriers and maybe just base them here in Guam. Base them there in Guam with all your heavy cruisers and have an entire task force just dedicated to that. Because, I mean, your battleships aren't going to keep up with them anyway, right? So, keep them with the heavy cruisers. Because the heavy cruisers are not going to decrease the carrier's speed by 10 fucking knots. Like the battleships will. So you have your fleet docked there, you have your half of your battleships in Pearl Harbor, and then you have another half of your battleships in Norfolk. Along with perhaps another half of your carriers. Not another half, but half of your carriers in Norfolk. So that would be 4 task forces. 2 in Norfolk, 1 for the carriers with their force of heavy cruisers, and the same thing over in Guam, but then you have 2 battleship task forces, 1 in Norfolk, 1 in Honolulu. I keep on switching between Honolulu and Pearl Harbor. It doesn't really matter. So you have 15 battleships. Historically, the North Carolinas and the Alabamas were under construction and wouldn't be in the fight for another few years. So, well, the North Carolinas would be, the others wouldn't. You would have the North Carolinas in the battle for Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands participating there. But other than that, it was just carriers with some few support. Anyway, so perhaps you're in that same situation, perhaps not. Either way, you have a bunch of your battleships taken out in Honolulu. Now that, if we get rid of all of our submarines, that gives us... I thought an Alabama had been built there. That gives us what? What is 15 divided by 2? 7.5. So 8 battleships out of commission, several more on the other side of the ocean underway, but hopefully Germany and Italy have worked together to decrease the UK's fleet just enough to where you're forced to take your battleship fleet and support the UK over in the Mediterranean. Excuse me. Now, why don't you just superfleet? Why not just superfleet over in London and keep the German Baltic fleet, because that's what it is. If it can't get out of port, in port. You keep the German Baltic fleet in port because you just have such overwhelming numbers that they never want to engage, and you are very happy because you don't get a sea lion. Well, what happens in the Mediterranean after that? Well, you get dominated down here. If you have a massive super fleet up here, that's all of your ships being occupied by a force that basically just becomes useless. So you get dominated all the way down in the Mediterranean. Perhaps Italy is even able to link up with their Ethiopian front, and now they have free reign and can connect with the Japanese Navy if they want. On top of that, you have Gibraltar here, and it can get naval invaded over and over and over and over again until finally it falls, which means you have now lost access to the Mediterranean, and because of that, the Italian fleet not only has access to the Suez and can link up with the Japanese fleet if it wants to, but it can now link up with the German fleet. So, for the first 1.5 years before Japan gets America involved, as the UK, you're stuck here. Okay, so you have to split your fleet up. Okay, well, that's okay. You still maintain parity with the two powers, right? Well, Germany has some real good bonuses for their navy. I just learned this the other day through... I forget who it was. Let me see. Kurt Games. Essentially, he figured out that you can use... Where is it? I know it's around here somewhere. Screening bonus when using only capital ships, plus 10%. Okay, that's it. Alright. You can get up to 60%. He stacked all the bonuses. All the bonuses. And one of them was this one. So you can get it in capital ships here as well. Now, Germany, it means that Germany can forego, if it wishes to, a whole bunch of screens. It can basically have an entire fleet of capital ships, and it doesn't have to worry about screens, because it, no matter what, will have at the very least a 60% screening bonus, even without any screens. If Italy manages to make it up there, and the two fleets combine and attack the British Navy, then that's ridiculous. Yeah. Britain doesn't want that to happen. So its best chance is to spy on Germany and make sure that it always keeps just a little bit more capital ships than Germany, along with the screens. Import at all times. And that will keep the German fleet bottled up, because, I mean, say what you want about 60% screening efficiency, unless Germany manages to... Unless Germany is going for a naval game, like going all in and building a whole bunch of dockyards in order to support a massive screening force for an equally massive capital ship force to go against the UK fleet. I mean, that's the major thing that I immediately thought of when I saw that 60% screening bonus without any screens. Because if you have that, then you don't have to build any screens, which means you can focus purely on capital ships, which means you can pretty much build Panzer ships, you could build Bismarcks, you could build Scharnhorsts. It doesn't really matter what you build. You could build a Hindenburgs, for Christ's sake. If you have 60% screening efficiency without any screens, then you don't have to build screens. And suddenly, 4 screens for every 1 capital ship becomes 0 screens. Which means you don't have to go all in on the naval game just to beat Britain. You don't. You now have a force that can really hurt Britain, even if it doesn't have screens. So the UK has to commit, while you don't have to, which is an absolutely amazing thing for the Axis, because it allows Germany to focus on what it does best, land warfare, while donating a minimum amount of brain power and production and resources to their naval production. Italy isn't the same way. Italy must focus on naval production. Otherwise, it's going to fall behind Britain. Um, Italy must build a whole bunch of new capital ships, and it can. It can build, at the very least, another 4 battle cruisers and heavy cruisers. And what I like to do is I like to send them to Ethiopia and dominate this area of the ocean to help Japan once they get into the war, but also so that I may naval invade the Suez from the Red Sea if I need to, and that will allow me to link up my two fleets. And of course, I like to keep Ethiopia. I like to balkanize them and do my little thing there. Perhaps I'll do a video about that in a little bit. My hotkeys aren't working with my sweet button. So what does that mean for Italy and Britain? Well, it means that Britain's historical King Georges, they basically all have to be dedicated to the Italian front. While all the dreadnoughts get dedicated to the German front. And Italy and the UK must duke it out. But if Germany's doing its thing and Italy's doing its thing, then they can both combine their firepower in airplanes and dominate the Mediterranean that way. And of course there are counters, but this is just a hypothetical. So let's say the British fleet ends up being completely crushed in the Mediterranean. They lose, let's just say, half their ships, and they can no longer compete with the Italian Navy. So instead, they double down on guaranteeing that Germany cannot sea lion, and they take their Mediterranean fleet and they dock it along with their North Sea fleet in Scapa Flow. And that allows them to keep control over their own ports and ensure that Germany doesn't do the funky. Or perhaps a better strategy is keep them in Gibraltar and keep them on patrol, perhaps no engage, so that Italy just can't get in there and take Gibraltar and dominate the Mediterranean that way. Perhaps they do that anyway as a automatic defensive strategy just in case they lose. And they bide their time until the US comes into the war. So that's the US battle fleet in Gibraltar fighting Italy and dominating the Mediterranean after that. But what about over here in the Pacific? Well, Japan has the Yamatos, the Nagatos, the Fuzos, and the Issei. They have more carriers, hopefully, than the US at this point. Yeah. It's not looking good for the small US task force of heavy cruisers and carriers. So that means that the US is on the defensive. And naval AA attack against carriers isn't the best thing. So not only can it just not spot the Japanese fleets, capital ship attack also affects heavy cruisers. So they can't do shit for the next 180 days. So what does the US do? Well, it can sit in port. But if Japan is smart, then it's going to start naval invading uh, everything. Places like Guam, and it's going to start island hopping all across the Pacific. And if your fleet is based in Guam and the naval invasion happens and you lose Guam, well, now your fleet is just automatically out here. And I don't know exactly how it works, but perhaps it now moves over to Wake Island, but the Japanese fleet is here. And the two sea zones. And that is Wake Island, right? Yes, it is. And now you're facing off against the Yamato. You get the Battle of Wake Island instead of the Battle of Midway Island. And what ends up happening is you die. So what do? Well, you take your fleet, you base it in Honolulu, and you project power over here, and you hope that the Japanese Navy cannot get enough naval power in order to start island hopping all the way over to you, because they're going to need Midway Island in order to island hop all the way to Honolulu. So where does that leave you? Well, it leaves you on the defensive, certainly. And if you're sitting here on no engaged patrol, well, shit happens. You're not going to do much other than prevent a naval invasion. Now, I don't know if no engaged patrol actually works for the intended purposes of gaining naval dominance and denying the enemy's naval dominance in return. You're probably going to have to get subs in the area as well and convoy raids so that the Japanese, don't gain enough dominance in order to do stuff. As you can see, raiding decreases naval dominance. So what are you to do? Well, you at this point have a choice. You see, you don't have to go all the way over to the Med. You can take both of your fleets over here and you can base them in Honolulu, and now you don't have to do a whole lot in terms of worrying about whether or not the Japanese can naval invade you, but you still have these massive disadvantages. So even though you have a massive ship advantage, the fight is still going to be a pretty darn even fight. And that's essentially the way it was historically. You had Japanese and American carriers trading tit for tat, sinking each other, all the way up until the point where the U.S. and the Japanese basically had no carriers, but the Japanese couldn't replace their losses, and the U.S. could. So that the entire Pacific War, Japan, with this, and especially if they don't have a fleet, if a quarter of their surface fleet is taken out in Honolulu, then America is kind of screwed. um, the even fight is not something that the U.S. wants to take. It's not something that the Japanese want to take either. So you're left with an even fight, and Japanese want to take advantage of it. The U.S. doesn't. They want to be on the defensive. And that essentially locks down the U.S. fleet. So you're in... Well, it locks down the U.S. fleet for half a year, 6 months, and then everything's fair game, right? So the Japanese want to go in and be aggressive, but the U.S. wants to be on the defensive and avoid any conflict, any attacks, because it doesn't want these disadvantages. It wants to press its great many advantages. So there you go. That's the naval game. Now, it is worth noting, tag Japan. Yep. Hello? Ah. It is worth noting that with all these spies, the Japanese can go in and do a coordinated strike. It takes 5 days in order to prepare. It's not that much. Before you do anything, you can just fly on the U.S. This one is gonna be in 10 days. That's fine. That's great. And you can essentially just look and see where the American fleet is. Ah, it's in Guam. So I prepare, select target. I select Guam, Mariana region. I put 2 spies on the case, automatically repeat so I get a notification, boom. Takes 5 days to complete, and of course you'd want to do this much earlier. But now you have a way of striking the U.S. fleet. Pause, please. God damn it. Now you have a way of taking out the U.S. fleet, and you just need the task forces in the region to accommodate you with their naval and port strikes. French embargo, yeah. Okay. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. Target that region. Target the land if you can. And now I can go into here, or I would be if I had the resources. Turn it on, and suddenly U.S. fleet is taken out. Then in a few days, the thing will launch, and whatever is in here will also be destroyed, and you will have dominated. You can also do this in multiplayer. So if they have that task force here full of heavy cruisers and carriers here in Guam, as well as their entire Pacific battle fleet, well, that's not just a quarter of the U.S. fleet taken out. No, that is half of it. So now you're on even ground in numbers as well, and you can continually start to just fucking pound the U.S. into submission. Just continually strike those capital ships, those carriers, all of them into oblivion with your naval strikes. Especially because now they have minus 15% to 25% to AA. So they can't protect themselves. You can, at that point, probably sink the entirety of their fleet without trying. Essentially. You can sink half their fleet without trying, especially if you yeah, that's unfortunate. You're not going to be able to reach Honolulu, so you take out a quarter of their fleet, and then you damage another quarter, which takes out half their fleet, with a quarter being in need of repairs. And I guess what you would then do is you would take those task forces in that task force in Hawaii, send it to California, and take the carrier force from Norfolk, send it to Hawaii, and then that last one full of battleships, you can either decide, okay, UK needs it, or you can decide, okay, Japanese are being really aggressive. They want to sink the ships that they believe are in Pearl Harbor, or will be in Pearl Harbor, and they're going to try and go all the way to Midway, and was it Johnston Atoll? They're going to base there, and they're going to try their damnedest to port strike me, so that they can then gain naval dominance and do their thing with the naval invasions. And what the thing about that is that once Hawaii is taken, you basically need to be Germany with that 60% no screen buff. You have to, because the only things that are reaching that without, you know, the supply going, because the way Navy works is you won't have a certain range. You have to have enough fuel to return to port. So you can go half the distance, and then you have to take that other half back. If you have a port out here, then what you can do is you can use all of your fuel and then refuel here. But if this isn't here, then your range is severely limited. So all of your low range destroyers and screens, they'll only have a range of like out to here, but because fleet mechanics work on averages in terms of fleet range, you gain this range, even though most of your fleet is made up of destroyers. You have to take out all of your screens in order to reach Hawaii. And it's the same way of the other way around. In order to reach Los Angeles, the Japanese are going to have to take all of their screens out of their out of their task forces in order to reach Los Angeles, which gives home fleet advantage, which is a stalemate. At that point, the excuse me. At that point, the Japanese really just need to go for, what is it? Attu Island and naval invade Alaska, gain a port here, or perhaps gain this port and then naval invade back down there. Because closest port is Anchorage, Alaska, and that also doesn't have enough range. So you have to do a bit of fighting in order to get down there, or build a port in this tile of Alaska, and then naval invade Seattle. So that's that's obviously a bit more of a risky strategy. Yeah, I don't know what else to go over here. Yeah. At that point, though, the Japanese, because you only got half an American fleet operating in any region at any given time, that means that the Japanese can commit a quarter of their forces, aka their cruiser force, and send them down here and naval invade the China, Indochina? No. What is this region called? Indonesia. Naval invade Indonesia, take all the resources, and yada yada yada. While all the carriers essentially just fuck around dominating the Central Pacific. If the UK has done what it should, aka go for air and navy instead of army, focusing purely on a defensive army, then what could end up happening is the UK builds a lot more than just 5 King George V class battleships. UK can build double the amount of battle cruisers. Something like this, although... Oh, this was an idea that I had last night. A little bit of sidetrack. Battlecruiser armor, 33 knots. Get rid of this. Dual purpose, 34 knots. Light attack, 18.9. And you can even upgrade the engine if you wish. That turns it into a legitimate super heavy battle cruiser. Oh dear lord, how much cheaper is it than the super heavy battleship? About a third cheaper. Less than a third. Okay. That's ridiculous. And you can only put super heavy batteries on it. Okay. Okay, I see. You don't even need this because you have so much AA already. Which gives you more speed and it makes it a bit cheaper. And then obviously if you go over, let's add funds. Why? You can do, let's see, max range. It already has a massive range. You can go over here and do coastal battle fleet. That gets rid of a quarter of its range to make it cheaper. You upgrade it. Range goes down. That's perfectly fine. It makes it cheaper. Now it actually is a third of the price. Has completed focus seek strength in numbers. Aha. Oh. Dockyard output. Oh. FF. What am I doing right now? I'm doing zeros. Do that. And then go over here. Boom, 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 boom. That cuts down time even farther. And now you have a super heavy battleship that knows what it's doing. Very much so. 35 fucking not. Okay. I thought I would. Oh, and it constructs quicker because it's got all those production bonuses there. Production output plus 15%. Which is absolutely incredible. Yeah. Oh, jeez. Jeez. I should have built these instead of 2 more Yamatos in this game. Oh, wow. Alright. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Yeah, you can basically dominate this entire thing. But if the UK has done its job, and it's a pretty even fight in the Mediterranean, and it actually has more ships, then it may just do what it actually did IRL and put a small task force down here in the Dutch East Indies along with all the Dutch ships and with the Australian ships as well, and um, try their best to hold on, which would be interesting for this task force to face off against. You may indeed need more than a quarter of your firepower in order to go up against that, but it's gonna be small. I mean, and the UK can't micro that much. Like, you kidding me? I don't see how that that would go. But that's it. That's it for today. Not an actual game, just talking. Um, just talking. It's not too much. I want to get a Japan game out. This was really a test game. Um, and I want to get an Italy game out. I think I've got some cool little strategies for multiplayer that could end up happening with Ethiopia. I'm gonna have to do some tests with that. And the other thing that I want to do is a Yugoslavia run. That would be cool. Doing it exactly what I did with Congo, with balkanized Yugoslavia, and making a Chungoslavia. That will be cool. But that'll be it for today. That'll be it for this week. Yeah, have a nice day, everyone.